Megtooth Sabers requires a lot of work on engineering, drilling, smoothing, tapping, setting, imagining, cutting, stripping, twisting, dipping, tin it, pin it, wire it, fire it, lock it, blast it, swing it, bash it. Megtooth Sabers.
Bam, we're live, hopefully. Checking my stream, and it looks like we've got good enough internet here, and I'm not seeing any drop frames, so that's always good. It was great to see everybody. Sorry about last week, that was a fiasco. But at any rate, I've got a project here over on the bench we're going to work on tonight, so I'm going to bring the camera over here closer to the bench in a minute. But before I do, hey Bobby. Before I bring that project over to the bench, I want to show this saber again. I was trying to show it last week, but it was glitching. So the etch work on this saber was done by Pete's Powder Emporium. And this is like a Mandalorian theme, which is really cool. I don't know if you can see that or not. And then on the other shroud, you've got the skull thing for Boba Fett. Now, the other cool part on this hilt, beside all the etching, is Griff's Custom Saber did this copper winding on the hilt handle, which is really awesome. I'm trying to get that in there for you. That's actually copper wire on the hilt handle instead of leather wrap. And he did a window here where the switch hole was at, and there's actually a crystal chamber in there. And then he milled in 2 buttons on the side. And this saber is all basically installed, minus the soundboard. So the owner sent this to me to install a proppy because I don't think Griff's into proppies too much. So we're going to put a proppy in that thing. Secondly, I just want to show this one really quick. The last time y'all saw this saber, it had like Graflex like grips on it. This is the Finn Jedi, which this is a custom hilt from Finland by Vector. And this one's installed with Verso. And the video on the Verso 1 button and the Profi 1 button saber, which this is the same hilt that I did with Profi. And you can see the kind of the shattered weathering on this thing. There's a big gouge in it right here. But at any rate, those videos should be going up shortly along with the Star Killer. I'm actually waiting on some chargers to ship from the custom saber shop. But I know that winding's sick, isn't it, Max? But what I wanted to do is get back to building stuff. So basically, y'all know my test rig, and I'll show you like a sample test rig here. Yeah. Here's a crazy test rig, and here's a crazy test rig. So I build a lot of these test rigs to test different things out. One of those test rigs was for my Mentor Graphics, so it was really crazy. But tonight what we're going to do is we're going to solidify that up. So I'm going to bring y'all over to the camera over here to the workbench, and while I do that, I'm going to screen share and show some vacation photos. So stand by. I'm still with you guys, I hope. But you know, we recently went to the Keys and had a pretty good vacation. Me and Jin and Ella got to see some cool stuff. This was at Robbie's. And there's, you know, pelicans and Jen and Ella. Ella laying out on the beach, in the pool, relaxing. Adult beverages, swimming in the pool, in paradise. Life was good. So, you know, we had a really cool time. Ella got to see manatees. That's the toilet seat channel. And this was the night that we can't really talk about. But if you know what's going on there, it got worse after that. And there's Ella's expression. And there's how the night ended. So that night was a disaster, but in the end it was kind of funny. But at any rate, finally got to relax a little bit. Oop, don't want to see that. But at any rate, let's get back into see y'all on the bench here and see how that's looking. Let me get some light on the subject here. And basically, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to build a test rig. And I'm going to try to bring y'all in here. No, I didn't take the boat with me down there. I didn't take it, Bobby. My dad had a boat down there in Tavernier. So to build this test rig, what we're going to need is, and Bobby and I were talking about this earlier today, I think that's what kind of cued me in to do this. This is what's called a custom Saber Shop MHS V6 chassis. This chassis system works great inside of Ultra Sabers hilts and MHS Sabers. It's a cool little chassis in that once you get it and you order an 18650 Keystone sled too, and the 18650 Keystone sled will fit right down inside the now you do have to do some trimming, and I'll show you how you have to trim, but the sled will fit right down inside the chassis, and it actually snap locks into place here and here, and you got plenty of wire routing area here, and you know your soundboard will be here like this, and that's what we're going to do tonight. I don't know if I'm going to wire the soundboard like this so you can't see the wires. I should wire it so you can't see the wires. That would be ideal. The only thing that I'm going to do is, you know, this may not be totally permanent tonight. I may neaten this up, but kind of want to show you all the process. So you need a TCSS Custom Saber Shop MHS V6 chassis. You need a Keystone 18650 sled, of course an 18650 battery, appropriate for neopixels, and it'll go into your Keystone sled. And then you need a soundboard. Now for a test rig, you don't need a great soundboard. You can use Nano Biscotti, you can use Prism, you can use some old soundboard laying around that, as long as it'll drive neopixels. And in this case, I'm using Prism. This is a Prism 5.5 rig that you guys have seen me work with. And I'm going to go ahead and take the SD out of there because we don't want the SD in there while we're soldering. I'm going to need a speaker, and for tonight I'm using a TCS speaker because I had one spare laying around, and a neopixel end with the female plug. And the reason I use the female plug is because, you know, when you have neopixels, when they come, they're usually, and I'm going to try to find some strips here, hopefully on some male plugs. Aha. When neopixels come, you know, they come with these plugs, and usually you'll have the male on the feed end and you'll have the female on the opposite end. So I'm going to need this male plug with some neopixels on it here tonight. But what we're going to need for this project is the female end of the neopixel plugs that we're going to plug in to be able to test neopixel strips. But there's other cool stuff we can do with this too. Of course, we're going to need 2 buttons, and I'm going to use my test rig buttons. Now, eventually, I'm going to use a smaller profile button, probably, and mount it in the side here. But for tonight, I'm just going to rig up these buttons so you guys can see this thing working. And that's about it. And some wire, and of course your soldering iron. And my soldering iron is set on 360 degrees Celsius. So what should we do first? I think we should solder the wires onto the battery sled, which this is always difficult. So I'm going to try and get it where you guys can see. Hopefully you guys can see that. Stand by. I'm going to try and rotate it in so you can see it. And I'm going to try and zoom in here so you guys can see what I'm doing. There, I think you guys can see I'm going to be working right here. And I know it's out of focus, but you know, my camera sucks. What are you going to do? So basically what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to zoom back out so you guys can see what's going on. Is I've got some positive feed wires here, and I'm going to go ahead and strip 2 of these and put them together. They're going to actually go on my battery terminal. This is 22 gauge PTFE. One's going to go to our neopixel adapter. One's going to the battery, to the soundboard. There's not going to be a kill key on this thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist these wires together. I'm going to twist these wires together. I'm trying to get the camera where you guys can see. But I've twisted those wires together. I'm going to dip them in some flux. And I'm going to bring in my solder. Where did my solder go? I had everything laid out here. I did. I hid it. So I'm going to bring in some solder. Yaddy-dee. Solder. And I'm going to butter up my soldering iron here. And I'm going to solidify these 2 red leads together. And one of these red leads is going to go to the female pixel adapter we got, and the other one is going to go to the battery. Let me get some. I'm going to get some flux on this positive battery contact, just like that. And then let's zoom in here so you guys can hopefully see this. I know it's out of focus, just bear with me. Crappy stuff, but I want you all to be able to see this stuff as I'm zooming in. And I'm going to heat up this contact, and I'm going to lay some solder in there. And we got a good bead of solder going there. And then I'm going to bring our wire in. And hold it till it cools. All right, sweet. So that was easy. Now next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom back out so you guys can see what's going on here. And I'm going to take a piece of black wire here, and I'm going to strip some of this black wire. I'm trying to do this where you guys can see it happening. Might need to get some more. That light doesn't really want to be bright, but whatever. So this is my negative wire for my battery, and I'm going to swap sides here on this thing, and we're going to bring in some flux, and we're going to put some flux here on the negative battery side, and I'm going to flux this wire that we just stripped, our negative feed, and just like that. And now I've already tinned the wire. It probably wasn't on camera, but you know, what are you going to do? Hopefully you guys have seen me tin enough wires. Good Lord. Breathing in plastic smoke and the solder smoke. Warning, very dangerous. Ooh. Oh man, that was a good solder. All right, so there's our battery terminal. The only thing I did before we started the video is I always put a piece of ribbon on these 18650 sleds so you can tug the battery out. So that's the only thing I did beforehand on the video. So now we've got our negative wire and our 2 positive wires. This wire is going on the soundboard, and this wire is going to our neopixel adapters. So stand by. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to solder our wires onto our speaker. So everything's magnetized. So what I do is the speaker's magnetic, so I put it, you know, up against something here, and I'll show you, see if we can zoom in there and move that into the picture. Of course, somebody's going to be messaging me right now, right? I don't have time for that. If somebody is watching the stream and messaging me, I can't see your messages while I'm doing the stream, so. All right. Hey, Kim Kanama. I'm kind of like not looking at chat because I'm busy here soldering, but what we're doing is we're finally neatening up my test rig because I got sick of the hot glue and having to resolder everything all the time. So now y'all are going to see my little trick on speakers. Now the key thing about these speakers, you don't want to heat them up too long because then the glue that holds all that in gives up. But, you know, bada bing, there's one speaker wire, and I'm using the magnet on this set of Allen wrenches because that set of Allen wrenches is magnetic. And this will all go pretty quick, you know, once we get the basic components wired up, because there's really not much to the prism, and I'll explain everything before we start solidifying some of the wiring. But right now I'm going to pre-tin this speaker wire. That's going to go on our speaker. And I made that way too long. So I'm going to cut that because it's too long. We don't need it that long. We need it about yay long. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to hit this speaker wire. Just like that. And bada bing. So there's our speaker wired up, and now I'm going to twist these wires on the speaker. Let me zoom back out so you guys are a little probably more in focus or not getting a headache. I know that's out of focus when I zoom in, but I'm trying to give y'all some idea of what's going on. Yeah, using the magnetic, something magnetic to hold the speaker, you know, while you're soldering on it. I used to try and hold the speaker in my helping hands, and that was always, you know, a disaster, because the helping hands, you know, the speaker would slip out of it or whatever. And I forget who I saw do this. It might have been Jeff Birch or somebody like that that did the magnetic trick. I think it's Jeff Birch. And I was like, that's genius, I'm using it. So it wasn't my trick. It was something I caught from watching somebody else. That's the cool thing about, you know, these videos and folks that are out here doing those videos is you can always pick up some trick that makes something easier that's a headache for you. And when I saw Jeff Birch doing that, I was like, that's a thing of genius. All right, so now my speaker's wired. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my speaker wires in through there. And I'm not even going to glue this in because this isn't going into a Saber. But I'm going to go ahead and seat my speaker into that chassis, and that's all it is. It's a press fit. And so there are speakers in the chassis. And then our speaker wires actually go out through this hole right here and come up into the chassis. Just like that. It's just that easy. So now that the speaker wires are in, now I can actually run our negative wire. We're going to run it up through the same hole. And my positive wire for the soundboard, we're going to run there, and my other positive wire, we're going to run it out the center here like this, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about here in a minute. But once I get all this ready to go, I start pushing that sled home, and here's our positive wire for the soundboard, and this is our positive wire that's going to go to our neopixel adapter. And all that's looking kind of good there, except that positive wire there wants to be underneath the battery carrier, and I don't want that. All right, so now I'm going to drive this thing home with the battery in it. And it snaps in. So there's two snap locks. There's one here, lighting there. You can see that snap lock there, and then there's also one back here on this side. But now I have my positive board feed, my negative board feed, and my speaker wires. And we actually have my positive neopixel feed there. So believe it or not, we're almost done. There's really not much to this. So let's talk about the prism for a little bit. So here's the prism. And let me try to point out some things. So number one, I've already added a 330 ohm resistor here. This is the data pad on the prism. And the 330 ohm resistor protects the data line. The neopixel negative's got to be connected to two FETs. We're going to use this one and this one. These are switches. This is ground, auxiliary, and activation. And then on the back of the prism, we have positive, negative, and our two speaker wires. And that's it. That's the only wires we're going to have hooked up to this thing. So it's really rather simple. So let's get started. So since I'm going to go here, I think what we're going to do is do our positive and negative wires first. So I want to get them kind of cut to length here. I know it's going to be about like that. It's going to be kind of crazy because if I'm going to wire this so you can't see the wires, it's going to be a little tight. Oh. So butter this up with some flux. There we go. There's that. Now we're going to solder that wire on there. Now I need something to hold this up while I solder it. Hello, shaky hands. Y'all aren't going to be able to see this. This is a bitch about. Oh, look at that. Let me bring my hemostats in here and see if my hemostats can help me here, because that's going to be too close to the negative. I don't want that bridging. That's pretty good. Next is my negative wire, which we're going to bring it to about there. So I'm going to cut it there. Get the scrap out of the way. I'm going to strip our negative wire. This is the battery negative wire that we wired onto the keystone holder. This is our direct negative wire. And now we're going to bring in some solder. That's true. But trying to do this like in an angle where y'all can see it on camera is not so easy either. Because eventually what's going to happen is this board's going to be inverted. So you're not going to see most of these wires, as it were. And my fingers are going to be in the way for y'all to see this, but I'm going to try and get it where y'all may be able to see it. Let me see. Y'all might be able to see what I'm doing there. But this is the negative wire. And then now the two speaker wires, which they're going to need to be about yay long. So I cut my speaker wires way too long there, but what are you going to do? I don't know where I'm going to put the buttons at on this. You know, initially tonight the buttons are kind of going to be sloppy because I really hadn't thought about this a whole lot, but I think I'm going to use smaller buttons on the side of the chassis eventually to neaten them up. And trying to get that in frame. Zoom back out here. Whoa, look out. So what I'm doing right now is I'm twisting these speaker wires, and then I'm going to dip both of them in flux and tin them up with some solder away from the soundboard. Let's put some solder on my tip here, and we'll pre-tin both those speaker wires. And then let me set the soundboard in there real quick, and we're going to come in here and tack this first speaker wire, bada bing, and the second speaker wire. Ugh. I really need my hemostats. I can't maneuver that wire and hold it down all at the same time. So I'm going to put that wire in my hemostats, that second speaker wire. I'm maneuvering around the camera too. One thing that's important, I'm going to show you guys here in a second. I think one of the mistakes a lot of the new guys make is they leave, I'm going to try to get a knife here and explain this. They leave too much wire. So you can see the insulation on my wire goes right up to the pad. If you don't want to strip too much back, you want the insulation going right up to the pad, right up to the pad, right up to the pad. Sometimes I see guys with a wire strip back way here. And, you know, the problem is those can touch and then you get a short and that ain't good. So that part of the soundboard is wired. Now, I already have my positive wired. Now, I'm going to need to bring in my neopixel data. So that's the green wire. So on these female plugs, the neopixel data is the center wire, and on this particular one it's green. And this is 24 gauge. This is that Chinesium wire, which, you know, typically I don't really like that much, but it works for this. It works for a test rig. You know, it works fine for testing strips and what have you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring our... I'm going to have to make some room in there. So stand by one. I'm going to have to make some room so I can route some wires up in there. So the first wire I'm going to have to route up in there is green. Green. And this is going to be our neopixel data. And I'm going to pop on this neopixel data on the data line that I pointed out to y'all on the prism, which is right there. Yeah, Profi will fit into this chassis. Teensy Sabers fit into this chassis. It's a pretty good universal chassis from the custom saber shop. I like them a lot. All right, so now we have our neopixel, our speakers are positive and negative on. Now what I have to do is take a negative. This is going to be our neopixel negative, and I'm going to strip a little bit of it to go to the first FET. This is 22 gauge. I'm going to strip just enough to go on that FET pad, which is really small, and I'll show y'all what I'm going to do here in a second. So I'm going to pre-tin this wire. Oh, all right, that wire's pre-tin. Now I'm going to clean my iron, and let me try and get y'all zoomed in here. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. It's going to be out of focus, but what are you going to do? Let me try and move that camera a little bit. I know this is slightly out of focus, but what's going to happen is I'm going to go to this pad here, which this is our first FET for neopixels. If y'all know on a Profi, we bridge FETs, and you do the same thing on Prism and on CFX, so that FET's carrying less of a load. And then I'm going to come out here and I'm going to cut this wire because I'm going to be joining them here in a second. So I'm actually going to be joining these two wires and then sending them through to our neopixel adapter. So I'm going to pretend the second one. It's going to be cool because this thing's going to work, I hope. And if it does, then we'll be in business. All right. So now those two wires are on the MOSFETs, and I'm going to cut this one equal to that one. And then I'm going to strip these bad boys, and we're going to join them onto a single wire. So I'm going to strip. And when I'm merging two wires, I'll usually strip a little bit more than I do going to a pad. A little bit more. And then I'm going to take these two wires here and join them. Let me zoom back out. With the chassis in my hand. So I'm going to join these two wires that are coming off our neopixel negatives that are coming off the MOSFETs on the Prism. And I'm going to twist these suckers, and once they're twisted good, I'm going to put them in a little bit of flux. I'm going to bring in some solder. Not over the soundboard, so I'm going to pretend those wires right there. And then I'm going to strip our little scrap of white. And then I'm going to put shrink over that merge. And I'm going to pretend it, which will go to the hilt adapter. And I'm going to pie-ow it on there. Just like that. So now we have our single neopixel negative wire that's actually from both of those FETs. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. But both those FETs are now wired, but now let's put a piece of heat shrink on there. So I'm going to get out my heat shrink. And I know we're probably going to put this heat shrink over that joint to protect that joint. And turn on the old heat gun here. And send that to town. So now our neopixel data and our neopixel negative are hooked up, and the positive is hooked direct to the battery. So now all we got to do is solder on buttons, and we're in business. And I don't know if I have enough to turn that, but now I'm going to feed this neopixel negative wire out through there. Like that. And then board. Use our attachments. I don't know why I wired this with the wires on exposed. I don't know why I'm trying to make a test rig look decent, but there you have it. And I'm going to have to figure out what's binding me now. Kind of like that. And I'm going to have to neaten some of these wires up. It's a test rig. Plus I'm building it live, which is crazy. Now, these are our switch legs here, and just for the demonstration tonight, I'm going to pretend those switch legs, because we're about done here. It's all over with but the crying. So that should be ground. This one is auxiliary, and this one is power. So I already have my switch pre-wired. The switches are sharing a common ground. And tack the common ground. I'm going to do, but you know, I'm kind of excited to put the battery in this thing and turn it on because it's about ready to roll. No, that ain't going to work. There we go. So I know the red wire is going to go there, and I'm going to cut it, I don't know, about yay long, and that means that that wire is going to have to be cut there, and then our white wire to match, you know, about there and there. Okay, so now, and I messed up there, but you know, it'll be all right. Now I'm going to strip our red wire. This is direct from our battery positive, and it's going to go onto the positive of this female hilt adapter. Just like that. And we're going to pre-tin both of these. So she's almost done. And then hopefully I can chat with y'all a little bit tonight. But this thing's almost done. Don't forget to put your shrink on first, because once we solidify this joint, you ain't going to be able to get shrink on it. And we're going to pre-tin that wire. And we're going to pre-tin this wire. And we're going to put those together. Just like that. I'm going to slide the shrink over that joint. And we're going to hit that with a heat gun. We're almost done. We've only got one more wire join to make, and then which then I'll show you. And most of y'all that watch my videos know how I use these test rigs, but they come in handy, you know, for testing neopixels, but also for testing blade adapters. And I'm going to show you how I do that here in a bit. But now I don't have to have that stupid test battery anymore. You know, I can just turn my battery, put my battery into my test rig, and, you know, Bob's your auntie. I'm going to put some shrink on that before we solidify all this. Shrink wrap. Pre-tin. Pre-tin. Here we go. Bam, bam. Wham, bam. Thank you, ma'am. Basically, we're building a lightsaber here, but it's a lightsaber that will never have a hilt. If you want to think about it that way. A lightsaber that will never have a hilt. It will never have a home. And then I'm going to shrink up that shrink wrap there. And now we're done. So now the cool part, there's our test rig. And, you know, like I said, I'm going to do something else with these switches. I'm probably going to put some switches on the side of this chassis, like some smaller micro switches. And I'll get the soundboard where it's sitting down in there a little bit better, where it's snapped in. But, you know, that's pretty much our test rig. And now what I want to do is connect our test rig up to some neopixels. And I'm just going to clip on a male neopixel rig. I'm going to pop in our battery. There. And then here's some neopixels. Man. So the cool part about this rig is we can now test neopixels with it. Let me show you something else cool we can do with it. So you can build like a hilt adapter like this, and you can put a male plug on a hilt adapter. This could be the hilt adapter inside the lightsaber you're installing. And let's say you want to test it to make sure you don't have any shorts and that all is well. All you have to do is solder a male plug on your hilt adapter while it's in your saber. And then I'm going to drop this hilt adapter into a 1-inch saber piece, just like this. I just happen to have it laying around. This is actually a Kylo Ren conversion kit. And then I'm going to plug in our soundboard, our test rig, and then you can actually test neopixel blades. So I'm going to bring in a neopixel blade here, and I'm going to turn off these lights a little bit, and then let's fire this thing up. So that's how we can test a neopixel blade with our rig. Here's the best effects Prism can dish out. But at any rate, the bottom line is that these test rigs come in handy for a multitude of things. You should keep these neopixel plugs because on our test rig here that we have built, this monstrosity that we have created tonight, now I have my battery, my test rig all in one place. The only thing I really need to do is solidify the yeah, Bob does get around, is solidify, you know, I got to do something better with those buttons. You know, I think I'm going to put some like micro tactile switches there on the side so I can, you know, manipulate the micro tactile switches. But in effect, we have our own test rig here to test, you know, to test whatever we want. We're going to test blades. We're going to test neopixels. And it's very simple to test a blade. You just need a piece of 1-inch aluminum inside diameter, and you would do this. So why would you want to test this? Let's say you just built a lightsaber and you just installed your neopixel adapter into the hilt. The wires coming from your neopixel adapter, all you need to do is solder your red wire to the red wire, your data line to the green wire, and your white wire, your neopixel wire onto the white wire of these male plugs. And then you plug it into your test rig, and then you put a blade into here and light her up. And that way you can test to make sure that your hilt adapter was installed correctly and you have no shorts. Much better to find out if you have a short on a test blade than the real thing. So, you know, to me, I use my test blade when I'm testing all those kind of things. But yeah, having a test rig is definitely makes life easier. You can test things as you build them, and if y'all watch my build videos, you know that I'm a testing freak. So now let's go back into chat now that we're done with this disaster, so you guys can see it maybe in some better lighting. Stand by. We'll go back to Windows Share and Vacation Photos. Y'all stand by while I'm moving the camera. And we'll go back into that and go back into scene, and we're back, and we can turn off all that light so we don't need it, and I don't need all that backlight, and that's it. So here's our test rig that we built tonight. Y'all saw the parts we had laid out at the beginning, and I'm going to neaten up those buttons, and now maybe Jeff Birch won't, you know, laugh at me about my test rigs anymore, but there's no reason to get real finicky on a test rig. It's just a test rig. But now I can use this test rig to test neopixel strips. I can use it to test my hilt adapters when they're installed in a hilt. Yeah, the Wime didn't get to go to the Keys. No dogs were allowed in the hotels in Cape Canaveral, unfortunately. But it was just us. No Risky. Risky's still recovering from knee surgery anyway. He wouldn't have been good down there. But wow, you know, we built a test rig tonight. I did, and I was trying to tell y'all last week when, you know, when my internet was all screwy, but I did get these small DC motors in that drive crystal chambers. Like if you have a spinning crystal chamber, this is one of those small DC motors. And I know that, you know, I was going to try and get to this tonight, but my day job got in the way. And I almost didn't even go live tonight because I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. And then Bobby Susanbach's like, hey, can you build me a test rig? Because I'm doing something with his Saber right now. And I was like, I could build a test rig live tonight. I'm sick of having to whip out my test rig and y'all seeing wires all over the place. y'all see my normal insanity, which is, you know, this. Oh, Jesus. What a mess. So this was my blaster test rig for Profi Blaster, and it's morphed into a couple different things. We used it on this channel before. And then this test rig is actually the test rig for my Mentor Graflex. And we were testing all the functionality of everything I had going on the Mentor Graflex on this rig. So, you know, these are all neopixel strips that were doing different things, and there's another one missing there. This is the Bluetooth that I didn't even hook up. And this was like the red LED, and I think there was a blue LED in there too somewhere. Yep, right there. So this is all the stuff we used to test my Profi Graflex. Which, you know, that's this saber, which I think is still the finest saber that I've ever built. And on the outside, it's just a plain old ordinary Graflex. And on the insides, it's sick. I'm trying to catch up to what you guys are talking about. For those of y'all that haven't seen this, like I've shown it off on a couple of videos, but there is the Mentor Graflex, the guts. And that one test rig was testing all of my features that are present in this saber. And let me...
3.84 volts. An elegant weapon.
So this one has red LEDs blinking here, and these are like normal LEDs. It has blue LEDs lighting up a crystal chamber in here. You can see them blinking rapidly there. And then it actually has 4 crystals. You can see one here, and then there's another one in the middle pointing toward that first one. And then there's this crystal, and then it has the blade generator, and all those are neopixels. Of course, it's got a stock lit connector in there. And then, of course, it's got the neopixel blade. And not only that, I also have 20 neopixels going here, which I know y'all seen it before. You know, there's the 2020 neopixels doing their thing in the chassis. So needless to say, this was I think one of the finest sabers I ever built. I'm still proud of this thing. It looks better in person than it does on this crappy video. But I'm telling you, that is an awesome lightsaber. It's the finest saber I ever built. And, you know, part of me wonders if I ought not just concentrate on these higher dollar builds like this and not build out a lot of the other sabers that I do, but I don't know. I've got, I will have those 2 Finland hilts up for sale, as well as a Star Killer. And I know that, and I haven't seen Smooth Jazz Family tonight, but I am waiting on some chargers for the Finland hilts, and I'm waiting on a battery for the Star Killer, because I want to a brand new battery in it. I didn't want to ship it with a used battery in it. But the videos for those are done, and I'm doing the editing this week. And tonight we built a test rig. So a test rig is fairly simple. If y'all have some old crappy soundboards laying around, you can use them. And I can see that my internet is now having problems. We've dropped 8 frames, so that sucks. But at any rate, what else you guys got going on? I'm trying to catch up on chat. Let me get that phone off of my keys. Let me try to go up here and catch up on chat a little bit. If you had a test saber with a reduced length of pixels, let's say 7 pixels, where do you change the value to 7 so you can see drag effects work? Well, Bobby, I don't test drag and those kind of things on the test rig. The main reason I use the test rig is to make sure the neopixels are working in all colors and that the blast effects are showing up at the same place on both strips. That's how I use it. Oh yeah, Smooth Jazz Family's here. So I am waiting on some batteries to come in before I put that video up on the Star Killer. It's done. The Saber's done. So I'll give you a heads up before that thing goes on the market. Smooth Jazz Family. I heard you, Kybertech, and Kybertech's got a DVD on chat. But Max asked earlier, would you be able to do a NeoPixel wiring tips for next week? I bought a NX Pixel and want to do a version 2, but would love to get some tips and tricks. You know, Max, I think I've actually wired up. That's going to be awesome, Kim. You know, I'm sure you use crazy NeoPixels with that. Max, I've done live videos on the NX Pixel connectors before, and I did version 4 so that the accent LEDs can be controlled independently of the main blade. But if you're doing version 2, if I'm not mistaken, that's blade and accent pixels in parallel. And the biggest thing is pay attention to the direction about what you need to bridge on there and what you don't. I don't really have one to do anything with. All my NeoPixel connectors, yeah, I know, I'm out of them. And you know, when I built that thin neck saber, the OWK3, I used my last NeoPixel connector in that saber, and the one before that went into Ella's Princess saber. You know, the LGT Princess saber that I installed for Ella. So I don't have any laying around to do the tests. So my goal is for next week is to do the crystal chamber motors driven by Profi. I'll take one of my test rigs and rip the stuff off of it, and we'll go to town. But yeah, if you're doing version 2, it shouldn't be too bad. Just make sure you pay attention to the direction. Oh, Jeff Birch is here. May begin now. Last 61 minutes didn't count. That's not true, Jeff. We have to get going. It shows I've only been live 18 minutes. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe it dropped out 18 minutes ago. At any rate, I guess I'm still having problems with my internet. Yeah, Smooth Jazz Family, a lot of the fonts that you own I have too, but if you've got new ones and you end up buying that Star Killer, I can put them on there for you. Just don't kill me. Yeah, so what my theory is, Kim, is I think that I can write a blade style that should turn that motor slow in idle and turn it fast when it's on and make that motor kind of glitchy when it's in lockup. And that's the experiment I'm going to do. The hard part is those motors are so small is I have to find some way to put some paper disc on there that's visible so you guys can see how fast it's rotating. And that's something that I haven't worked out yet. But I'm pretty sure, you know, wiring it to the FETs is advantageous for multiple reasons. Number one, because I can make the motor do different things when the Saber's doing different things. Number two is if you use idle time off, then that means that crystal chamber motor will stop spinning at your idle time off time, which will save your battery. Yeah, I guess I see that I'm getting some warnings on my internet, and apparently Spectrum did not fix all of my internet woes. Look, I've tried it hardwired to the actual cable modem, and I've tried it over the net, and it's just Spectrum stinks. I'll be on Starlink as soon as they're available. But I had good speed today. I did a test. It did do well, but you know, it is what it is. But it is 9:30. And hey, Birch, so you remember my old ugly test rig? Well, I solidified it. So I put it in a chassis. So now my test rig is neatened up. I still can do a lot better stuff here, which I'm probably going to do. But at any rate, I wanted Birch to see that I made my test rig look better. I'm probably going to use some micro tactile switches here on the side. And, you know, I'll button this up and clean it up when I'm done here tonight. I was just trying to show everybody how simple it is to build a test rig, but there's the test rig, Jeff. It looks a lot better than it used to, and I may try to drop some shrink there or something. I don't know. We'll do a bunch of stuff, but I'm glad everybody joined in. It looks like for the most part it worked. I've got 11 warnings, and my warnings are that we dropped frames, and it doesn't look like it. So yeah, I mean, it's just a simple, you know, it's a simplification and solidification of my test rig. I got tired of soldering all the wires when they broke because I'm throwing it around, and I went ahead and just put it in a chassis. So now my test rig is a test rig. No more connecting my battery to it. The battery's on the sled. So that should make life a lot easier. Kybertech Sabers, I appreciate it. And I think Kybertech's getting ready to sell a DV6. Really quick before we leave tonight, I wanted to talk about the LGT Sabers and the pack store Sabers that everybody's buying, the Profi ones. I want to do a video for how you can upgrade the fonts on those, but I'm kind of reluctant to do it because I think OS 6, you're going to be able to add fonts. We program in the Saber in Fernando's edit mode. So I think I'm kind of reluctant to do that video because it's going to be irrelevant as soon as OS 6 drops. But for those of y'all that do, thank you, Kybertech, you are the man. But for those of y'all that do understand Profi, you know, I haven't been able to help all those users buying all those Sabers because I see those questions a million miles a second. I just bought my pack store. I just bought my LGT. How do I add fonts to it? So for those of y'all that have been chiming in there and helping all those new Saber owners, thanks a lot for helping them out. And hopefully when we get to OS 6, that won't be a problem anymore, you know, with the edit mode, which is going to be pretty cool. But, you know, thank you all for joining in. I enjoy chatting with y'all and listening to y'all's ideas. And the funny thing is tonight's show actually came from one of my viewers, Bobby Susanbach. And, you know, Bobby was talking to me earlier today, and that's what gave me the idea to do this tonight. And so now my test rig is no longer a piece of junk of wires hanging out. I actually have a solid test rig. And Max, if you want a test rig, you know, I can build you one. You just pay for the parts, and I'll ship it to you down under. But, you know, I'm happy to see all y'all. It's been a tough couple of weeks. I got back from vacation, and the world went nuts. And the day job's been really bad, but, you know, I was glad to be able to come on tonight briefly, however brief it may be. So I got to go down and nurse Jen because her leg, you know, I don't know if y'all know, but her ankle got broke while we were on vacation. So she can't walk on it. She can't bear weight on it. And I got to go play Nurse Tom. So can't be away from Jen too much longer. She might need something to drink or, you know, who knows. But I'm glad we got a chance to do this tonight. Hopefully next week we'll do the crystal chamber motors. If that's not going to work out next week, I probably won't go live until I'm coming back. Internet's coming back. It's horrible. My stream's horrible. But at any rate, let me go. My internet's about to drop out completely. May the force be with y'all, and hopefully Spectrum can fix this crap before next week. May the force be with you, or the dark side as it were.
Thank you everybody for watching as usual. I really appreciate y'all tuning in on my channel. And as always,